Iran has launched a massive new ballistic missile and drone attack on northern Israel in response to Saturday's attacks by the Zionist regime on the country's energy infrastructure. Gaza's health authorities reported that the Palestinian death toll in the war-ravaged Strip rose to 55,297 since October 7, 2023. In the United States, tensions rose in the streets of downtown Los Angeles as police tried to disperse protesters. Hello and welcome to From the South, from the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba. My name is Laura Rodriguez. We begin with the news. Iran has launched a massive new ballistic missile and drone attack on northern Israel in response to Saturday's attacks by the Zionist regime on the country's energy infrastructure, including the largest natural gas extraction and refining plant. The Iranian Air Force has confirmed the launch of a combined strike against Israel involving both ballistic missiles and unmanned drones. Several of the Iranian ballistic missiles have flown over Jordanian airspace, and many of them have reportedly been intercepted by the country's anti-aircraft systems. Israel's emergency services report that several warning calls have been received in the country's coastal and northern districts for damage to buildings and open areas. In this context, the primary focus of this new round of Operation True Promise 3 is reportedly the occupied port city of Haifa and its surroundings, home to several critical military and industrial facilities of the regime. The strikes have so far targeted a series of strategic Israeli military and industrial sites, including oil refineries and electricity grids in Haifa, where fires reportedly broke out as a result. Images show a massive blaze at the Haifa oil refinery with thick black smoke billowing into the sky, with preliminary reports suggesting that the ensuing blaze is emitting toxic chemicals into the air. In the northern occupied territories, missile sirens sounded in the Upper Galilee and Western Galilee regions, as well as in the city of Nazareth and its surrounding areas and the city of Afula. The Iranian Air Defense Force shot down Israeli drones in the airspace of Zanjan province. Iranian air defense intervened immediately after several small drones and reconnaissance vehicles violated the province's airspace and managed to destroy advanced Zionist drones in several areas. They also reported that these drones were intended for espionage and surveillance operations inside the nation. Therefore, the armed forces and the air defense network stated that they are on high alert in case of any infiltration into the country, assuring that they will respond to the enemy as soon as possible. On the other hand, Tasnim news agency reports that the headquarters of Iran's defense ministry, located in Tehran, was attacked on Saturday night by Israeli forces. The media reports that one of the office buildings of the headquarters was slightly damaged. Meanwhile, during another attack in the area, the ministry's Defense Research and Innovation Organization was also hit. Previously, the Israeli Defense Forces reported that they attacked military targets in Tehran while operating to intercept missiles launched from Iran. Iranian naval forces identified a British intelligence destroyer operating in the waters of the Sea of Oman, accused of attempting to guide Israeli missiles into Iranian territory to change its course. The Public Relations Office of the Iranian Naval Region reported that the British warship, which had entered the northern Indian Ocean the previous night with the alleged purpose of coordinating Israeli attacks, was detected by Iranian maritime surveillance systems. It was also subsequently intercepted by Navy combat drones, which issued warnings that prevented its progress into the Persian Gulf. The destroyer, now under Iranian operational monitoring in the waters of the Sea of Oman, was thus forced to alter its trajectory, although Tehran did not specify whether there was a physical confrontation or only strategic deterrence. Israel has urged the Trump administration to join its war effort against Iran to eliminate Iran's nuclear program. Despite the repeated requests by the Israeli regime, the Trump administration has so far resisted direct involvement, maintaining that Iran would have no legitimate grounds to retaliate against U.S. targets for an Israeli-led operation. Officials warned that any U.S. strike on Iranian territory, even a limited one, would drag the U.S. into a full-scale war. Israel lacks the necessary capabilities, such as bunker-busting bombs and long-range bombers, to destroy deeply buried sites like Iran's Fordo uranium enrichment facility, which is fortified within a mountain. The U.S., however, possesses these weapons and has them stationed within striking distance. In the Middle East, Syria and Jordan closed their airspace amid regional tensions. In the midst of escalating tensions, the Middle East has decided to close its airspace as a preventive measure against possible threats to its national security. The measure follows similar restrictions adopted by Iraq and Iran. This in a context of growing instability generated by the provocations of the Israeli regime and its Western allies. Meanwhile, in Yemen, the Ansarullah movement categorically denied on Saturday reports of alleged Israeli airstrikes on Yemeni territory. The denials come after international media reported alleged Israeli bombardments against Houthi positions in the last 24 hours. Likewise, while the enemy is staggering under the weight of the Iranian attacks, it resorts to promoting lies to fabricate an imaginary victory. For its part, the Yemeni government claimed that this news is a part of a psychological war to mislead the people of the Middle East. Iran's central bank allocates new resources to subsidize commodity imports amid a growing military confrontation within the Israeli regime. The central bank's public relations office allocated $1 billion to commodity imports, adding that some $400 million of the funding was transferred to the accounts of the bank that processed the imports. They also detailed that the decision is aimed at increasing the country's commodity reserves. The announcement came after the Israeli regime carried out airstrikes against the nation. Government officials have said that the country has sufficient food and other commodity reserves to cope with the emergency conditions caused by the escalating military confrontation with Israel. According to Gaza's health authorities on Saturday, the Palestinian death toll in the war-ravaged Strip has risen to 55,297, with a further 128,426 injured since the genocide began on October 7, 2023. Over the past 48 hours, Israeli attacks have claimed 90 Palestinian lives and injured a further 605 people. It specified that 5,014 deaths and 16,385 injuries had occurred since March 18, 2025, and revealed that medical facilities had received 274 fatalities and over 2,532 injured people from incidents near humanitarian and distribution centers in southern Gaza. And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. In the United States, tension rose in the streets of downtown Los Angeles as police tried to disperse protesters. As police fired flashbangs and canisters of tear gas, protesters responded with loud fireworks and calls to hold the line. Masses of demonstrators crowded the streets, parks, and squares across the U.S. on Saturday to protest President Donald Trump, marching through downtowns and small towns, blaring anti-authoritarian chants mixed with support for protecting democracy and immigrant rights. Confrontations were isolated. However, police used tear gas and crowd control munitions to clear out protesters in Los Angeles, where protests were over several immigration federal enforcement raids erupted a week earlier and sparked demonstrations across the country. Also in the U.S., 2 Minnesota state legislators and their spouses were victims of separate shootings, allegedly carried out by an individual posing as a police officer. Democratic Representative Melissa Hortman of Brooklyn Park and her husband Mark were killed. Democratic Senator John Hoffman and his wife were injured and are receiving treatment in hospital. The attacks occurred in 2 different locations, Champlain and Brooklyn Park. The police department issued a lockdown alert following reports of multiple shootings, warning residents not to approach any suspects as the shooter may be posing as a law enforcement officer. Authorities believe the attacker is armed and extremely dangerous.
We're here today because an unspeakable tragedy has unfolded in Minnesota. My good friend and colleague, Speaker Melissa Hortman, and her husband Mark were shot and killed early this morning in what appears to be a politically motivated assassination. Our state lost a great leader, and I lost a dearest of friends. Speaker Hortman was someone who served the people of Minnesota with grace, compassion, humor, and a sense of service. She was a formidable public servant, a fixture and a giant in Minnesota. She woke up every day determined to make this state a better place. She is irreplaceable, and we've been missed by so many. Minnesota's thoughts and prayers are with her family, her loved ones, her children, and her parents. My prayers also go out to State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette, who were each shot multiple times. The Hoffmans are out of surgery at this time and receiving care, and we are cautiously optimistic they will survive this assassination attempt.
On Saturday, the presidents of Russia and the U.S., Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, spoke by telephone. The 2 leaders discussed the escalation in the Middle East caused by the Israeli attack on Iran. According to Yuri Ushakov, a Russian presidential advisor, Putin condemned Israel's military operation against Iran and expressed serious concern about a possible escalation of the conflict. Trump also described the situation as very alarming, but acknowledged the effectiveness of Israel's attacks on facilities in Iranian territory. The telephone conversation between the 2 leaders lasted 50 minutes. They also discussed the Ukrainian conflict and compliance with the agreements reached with Kiev at the last Istanbul meeting. In other news, in Bolivia, President Luis Arce announced that he will continue operations to remove roadblocks in regions disrupted by protests demanding that former President Evo Morales be allowed to return in upcoming elections. Arce reported that police and military forces are working to lift the blockades in Potosí, Chiquisaca, and Santa Cruz. In this regard, authorities are taking action to guarantee free transit and the safety of citizens and prevent food shortages. President Arce also condemned acts of political violence and what he described as illegal methods in the exercise of democracy. As Brazil's trial of former President Bolsonaro moves forward quickly, legal analysts are predicting that the final verdict will be made by October. Our correspondent Brian Meyer has more.
The Supreme Court trial against former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro and 7 of his cronies, who prosecutors believe made up the central nucleus of a 3-year plot to implement a military coup, has reached the final stretch as the defendants were called to the stand this week to testify.
I would like to know of the defendant. Mr. Bolsonaro believes that he acted within the framework of the Constitution when, after disagreeing with a court order, he summoned the commanders of the armed forces to debate it.
Far-right former President Jair Bolsonaro started off calmly during his nearly 2 hours on the stand. But most journalists and analysts who covered the proceedings believe that as the questions got more complicated, he began to lose his cool and sabotaged his own defense.
Por que comandante militar? Tem a mesma formação minha.
Why the armed forces commanders? We had the same education. We went to the academy. We had the same training. The military are always with you in your good and bad moments. I was in no mood to invite anyone to discuss anything. They were the only ones left who could listen to me let off steam.
The defendants have finished their testimony. Now the court will summon key witness, Lieutenant Colonel Mauro Cid, to the stand. to make his final statement. From this moment, the defendants will have a period of 15 days to develop and present their final arguments to the court. At that point, a panel of 5 justices will issue their rulings, which legal scholars are predicting will come in by October.
Bolsonaro
incriminated himself by admitting the existence and his knowledge of a written coup plan, by admitting that he presented this plan in a meeting with the commanders of the armed forces, and by admitting that he directly looked for alternatives to the election results, including declaring a state of siege.
If convicted, former President Jair Bolsonaro will face a sentence of up to 40 years. Brian Muir, teleSUR, Brasilia.
We have a second short break coming up. Before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. On Saturday, the Indian police said the death toll from Thursday's Air India plane crash near Ahmedabad airport in Gujarat has risen to 279. Air India's flight AI-171, a Boeing 7878 aircraft flying from the western India city of Ahmedabad to London, descended rapidly and crashed into a building on Thursday shortly after takeoff, killing 241 people on board with only one survivor. The death toll increased beyond the 241 passengers and crew confirmed dead in the crash, as the mishap also caused casualties on the ground. In this context, India's Civil Aviation Minister Ram Mohan Naidu Kinjarapu said Saturday that authorities have begun inspecting Air India's entire fleet of Boeing 787 Dreamliner aircraft after this week's crash. Kinjarapu announced that 8 of the airline's 34 Boeing 787s had so far been reviewed, as he gave his first news conference since Thursday's crash. Moreover, he stated that investigators were still decoding the black box from the Dawn plane. Alongside the formal investigation, the Civil Aviation Minister also confirmed the government has formed a high-level multidisciplinary committee to examine the causes leading to the crash.
And from the ministry, taking utmost seriousness of the incident, the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, which was formed specifically to look into the accidents that happen around aircrafts, was immediately mobilized, and the GO team from the AIB, including 5 members constituting DG AIB, was also immediately rushed to the site to start the investigation process. And since day one, within hours itself, the AIB has started its process of investigation. And one important update from the technical investigation, which is happening through the AIB, is the recovery of the black box yesterday around 5 p.m. from the site. The AIB team believes that this decoding of the black box is going to give a in-depth insight into what would have actually happened during the process of the crash or moments before the crash itself. So we are also eagerly waiting for what the results or the report is going to be once the AIB goes through its full investigation. And from the ministry,
in China, more than 12,000 people were evacuated after Typhoon Wu-Dip hit the southern part of the country. The Weather Service reported that the storm could weaken this Saturday. However, rains are expected to cause impacts in Guangdong province, which is on emergency alert. On the other hand, residents of the Beibou Gulf region are experiencing rough seas, with waves up to 5 meters high. The authorities recommended that vessels operating in the area take precautionary measures. Similarly, the Meteorological Administration urged citizens to take preventive measures against the possible effects of wind, rain, and landslides in that region. Meanwhile, the National Hydrometeorological Forecast Center of Vietnam reported that at least 5 provinces could be affected by floods and landslides caused by Tropical Storm Wutip. The meteorological agency warned the population to be on the lookout for potential disaster risks, as rain is expected over the weekend. It also pointed out that flash floods and landslides could negatively impact the environment and endanger lives. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Agriculture and the Environment has stated that it will monitor the rainfall to prevent and minimize damage. We change topics. Thousands of people in brightly colored outfits danced and sang as they marched through the streets of Rome, Italy, on Saturday as the city held its annual Pride Parade. The mayor of Rome, Roberto Gualtieri, led the parade, and prominent politicians also joined the event. Alongside the sea of color, 40 floats swooned through the streets of Rome's center and past the Colosseum. As well as the many brightly colored flags, many also waved Palestinian flags to express their solidarity with the Palestinian people.
Every pride is always important. It's always important to be together, straight, gay, bisexuals, no gender, anything. It's important to be free to be who we are, to love who we want and live well.
To be present here means to reaffirm that every one of us, whatever his orientation, idea or faith, has the right to exist with the same rights as others. So to be here simply means that we exist.
So it is very emotional because to me pride represents freedom. It's a safe place, and in this moment we are all more free. And as soon as you get out of here, there is always that moment when you don't feel really free. But at Pride there is total safety.
We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net, and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Laura Rodriguez. Thank you for watching. Before we say goodbye, we bring you live images in the context of the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, amid an unprecedented escalation between Israel and Iran. In the last few hours, Iran and Israel have traded missiles and airstrikes as the conflict that's killed dozens escalates with no end in sight. At least 80 people, including 20 children, have been killed in Iran and 4 in Israel, with hundreds wounded on both sides in the ongoing tit-for-tat attacks. This is all for now, but stay tuned with TeleSUR English and the emissions of From the South. We will be covering and bring the latest news on this grave escalation.